And we'll have to share some stories about like how boundaries and communication, because when you're working and you're living in the same place, like I kind of missed initially, I may say this, I kind of missed, the days of like everybody leaves the house, the kids go to school and Brian goes to work and I can be in my zone and I have the house to myself. And like suddenly, I guess I forgot to say that Brian was working from home for 6 months before he left his job. So it's kind of like I was getting and being at home. But then when I was like, oh, this isn't going away, and the kids go to school and Brian stays here. And I love him, but we just like, where's this space? Where's the definition of life and business? It starts encroaching, right? So we had to find of like how to like, I don't want to not like you.
Yeah, right. It's a real thing.
I'm thinking, how is that even possible?
Oh, you can definitely say the same about me too, right? Like sometimes we'll be having just a regular conversation like, Joy, would you please take your CEO hat off for a minute, please? Anyway, so I think it's been about finding the boundaries, communication. Am I in business mode? Are you in business mode right now?
So yes, I completely agree with that sentiment. It is a huge ego hit. It's a terrible feeling. And the more responsibility you have, as Leon, as you can understand here, and the more responsibility you have and the more you've grown in your career and higher up you go, the worse it is when you leave it and you're going from the stability financially, since, Joy's the entrepreneur, which is by definition never stable, right? Because you're always on, it's always up to you, right? But that's the glorious part of being an entrepreneur, is like you're making your future, and that's why we do what we do, right? But the stability, you have to take that as part of the package.
Welcome to today's episode of Influence by Design. I'm your host, Samantha Riley. And today I've got a very special episode because I've got 3 guests with me. So I've got kind of a co-host, my beautiful husband, Leon Flitton. So welcome, Leon.
Thank you.
And I've also invited Joy and Brian Bufalini to join me. So Joy and Brian, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thanks.
Good to be here.
Excited about this conversation.
So this is a conversation that came up when Joy and I were speaking together a few months ago, just after something else that we were doing. And we were talking about how both of our husbands work with us. And I went, how cool would it be if we had a conversation about this? I said, because I was chatting and I said, Leon came from corporate. We had a few hiccups in the early days. And she went, well, guess what? So did we. And I went, well, let's have this conversation, because I know that there is many, many people that want their partner to come into the business with them, either their husband or their wife. And they're a bit afraid of what could happen. And, it's not all a bed of roses, but for us, we absolutely love it. I'm going to guess you guys do too, seeing you're still working together, but just having a conversation about what that transition looks like. Yeah, and you're still married.
I doubt we would have joined you today if we weren't.
That would have been a little creepy, right? But yeah, just having that conversation to inspire people that, this can happen and how it works for us. So I would like to actually start with you, Joy. At the time that you thought, it might be good to bring Brian into the business, what were the thoughts you were having before this conversation?
Is this crazy?
Oh, I know that this is going to be all sorts of crazy.
Before the king line was delusional.
Right. Right. So it's kind of interesting how it sort of unfolded, because in 2018, we had done a few projects together, like more officially some marketing endeavors together. We experienced the initial friction of like, well, here's how we do it. And like, no, here's how I do it. And I made the money doing it this way. And like, experiencing that initial friction, which was good. And like, maybe eventually, what does this look like? But Brian had a secure, well-paying job with benefits. He did not like it. But I did outpace him, of course. And it was just like, Does this make sense to maybe look at resources here? In 2019, we decided we're going to move from cold, dreary Pennsylvania to move near the beach in Florida. So Brian told his boss, I'm virtual, as of June 2019. And they needed him like, okay, fine, just don't leave. But then the company sort of changed and we started having conversations. Brian, you remember these walks we took of like, what if? Like, what if we just brought your skills into the business? It seems like things have stabilized. And it felt scary though, like letting go of that secure paycheck and the health insurance and all of that. But remember this conversation, what we said on this walk, Brian, of like, what if? What was the what if? I'll let you say it.
We have 10 conversations a day.
No, that's an understatement.
That 3,000 conversations ago.
Right. Well, that walk, I remember saying, like, we were feeling clearer and clearer. And I remember on that walk saying, whatever happens in the world, we will figure it out and be okay. And 3 months later, the pandemic happened. And layoffs at his work happened and who knows what. And like everything became uncertain. I'm like, okay, we're in this together, and like really in this together now. And it was the perfect time. It was the perfect time to have made that decision for sure.
So isn't that interesting that you've wanted to do it for such a long time and the universe forced your hand? Leon, I think it's about time that you told your story because maybe we've got a similar story. Because we've been talking about it for a really long time about you coming into the business. And similarly, we had been working on projects together. And then one day I had a phone call. I'm going to just pass it to you and let you tell the story.
Yeah, well, I think I'd been working in the business for a while as it was anyway, a bit of a side gig kind of thing because funnily enough, I was actually the podcast editor for quite a while. So, right. But on this particular day, things change, companies restructure, all that kind of stuff. And there was a choice. And like I could have stayed, I could have gone, could have gone either way. And I just was like, no, I'm going. And I'm out. And that was it. But I just want to ask Brian as well, like that point where you go, no, I'm out, did that freak you out?
Yeah, it's Phantom of the Opera, No Turning Back Now, the song. Because we just watched that a couple of weeks ago, and we've been having those songs in our head ever since. It drives us nuts. But yeah, there's no turning back, and you've crossed that bridge, and now you stand and watch it burn, is the way the lyric goes. That's literally what it feels like. It's like there is no turning back here. And the first thing that you think about is health insurance, at least from over the US.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, instead of, like $500 a month that I'm putting into it, now it's $2,000 a month that I get to pay all by myself. And I'm suddenly now going from an earner to a pure expense for our entire health.
You went on the payroll, right? Yeah.
I am literally just an expense.
Yeah.
Started. I think I still am, but at least we're
Yeah, it does require a really big shift mentally. And I'm going to ask, because I know from our perspective kind of how this happened. In the transition, Brian, in that very first day where it's like, okay, I've finished my job, I'm now in the business. So I'm talking like day one, you wake up, I'm like, oh, I'm in the business now. What were the thoughts that were going through your head?
Well, I'll tell you, I had basically 3 best friends. And that was my real estate agent, my accountant, and my insurance agent. And those are the only things I worked on in the entire first month, is trying to figure out, how do I take care of my family and make sure everything's taken care of from an insurance standpoint. And we had just moved and we were looking to make another move. And then your accountant is involved and he's helping us because we're new in Florida and all that type of thing. And it's like, this is nothing like I used to do. I used to be in corporate marketing. I used to, help salespeople do a lot of great things with medical products and helping people in hospitals and all sorts of good things. And now my 3 best friends are people you would never think are your best friends. And so it was,
and you're in your office, right? You're in your office by yourself.
By myself and my cats. That was it. They were all over the place. And so there is this nervous energy about it. But when you realize that the thing that helped me most is to like get down on paper everything I was supposed to be working on. And so I typed out a big note and it helped me to prioritize that. So the first month, that's what got me through it. But it was definitely, there were a lot of nerves and butterflies. And did I make a mistake? Is something that often came up in the first couple of days for sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
totally.
And a change was too, like instead of like the to-dos coming from your MBOs or from your boss or the team, suddenly I'm like, hey honey, we need this done. Hey honey, like that was a very different dynamic too. You also, I want to acknowledge, became Mr. Mom. So in a lot of ways, like our three kids were still home, even though in high school, we have a daughter with complex disabilities who requires extra care, and he could keep his eye on her while I'm, having coaching sessions. So we completely flipped. I completely stopped cooking. We already had a house cleaner and things like that. But he was like, kids need picked up from here, there. Like he completely took over that responsibility, that's quite a role us women play when we have kids at home too. So like big kudos to him. Just stepped right into those shoes so I could focus on the business. And we expanded a lot that year in 2020 because I could just be focused right on that. And it's almost like we reversed roles in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Business things. He was doing it on the side. I was full-time, go in my office and, work all day, which I enjoyed. And the kids were well taken care of, as well.
Yeah, it's a big energy shift, isn't it? And unless you've been through it, it's really hard to understand it. So from your perspective, Joy, and I will come to you in a minute, Leon, what was it like for you? And I'm talking like that day one where all of a sudden Brian's like, I'm here. How did that feel for you?
It's funny. I don't remember a day one because like our roles were already starting to shift before there was just like, okay, January 1st, you're no longer employed by that company. It was just interesting. I don't think I noticed it as much. It was just more like, I have more support. This is great. So, yeah, and I didn't honestly initially feel any fear or concern. I felt pretty confident in our plan and that, we'd been married at that point, almost 25 years. We'd known each other.
Congratulations.
We were in junior high. And just
That's
the fact
so beautiful.
Even the fact we'd stayed together, like the odds were against us having a child with complex disabilities. The divorce rate is so much higher. So I okay, we made it through that. We stayed together, we got stronger, we can navigate this. Not everybody can, not everybody has the personality. We can both be strong-willed and buck against each other, but I'm sure we'll talk more about how to make it work practically.
Totally. Oh boy, have I got some stories.
Oh yeah. I'm sure.
We don't have enough time today. We really
Right?
Exactly.
It's
the 24-hour podcast.
The Truman Show, if you've ever seen that old movie. That older movie, The Truman Show.
I love that. So Leon, can you remember that day one? Because for us, we didn't have a pandemic that I think added different energy. It was like one day you were at work and the very next day you weren't. So it was kind of a bit of a shock for us. I was super excited. I'm like, oh my God, the universe, I love you so much for doing this. But from your perspective, and I want to know, just day one, what was coming up for you? Because I know that there was some big energy you were dealing with.
Yeah. So I'd actually been in retail it was almost 30 years. It was ridiculous. It was a long time. And in retail, everything's, and the particular company I was working for, everything was mapped out. You just knew this has to happen then, this has to happen now. You check this list, you do that, you do this. And it's just, it's the same. And then and I was the boss, right? So I was always the boss for the last, 20-something, 5 years, that I worked there for. Then I wasn't the boss anymore. That was a bit odd. But I think, just going, okay, so there's no, you don't have to go anywhere. You have to go to this particular thing, do this particular job in front of and meet this particular person. And it was a bit odd. It was a bit weird, a little bit surreal, I suppose. And I don't think I quite got what Sam was on about, if that made sense. There was a bit of a, the corporate guy and the entrepreneur girl kind of thing going on. Going back a ways, I remember we first started going out. I didn't really understand your world at all. So,
not at all.
Right.
Yeah. But it ended up being like, that point there where it was like, well, his opportunity, just let's go now. And that day one, and it was a bit surreal, very exciting, and I was probably a bit lost actually. So-
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, a bit lost. And the reason that I'm glad that you said that, and I remember I flew down to Melbourne to go to an event, and the person that picked me up from the airport has been a very good friend of mine. I'd met her at a mastermind years ago, and her two daughters are working with her. And I remember actually speaking with her daughter, who I'd known for a long time because we'd gone overseas together. And I sort of said, how do you go working with your mum? Because Leon has just started working in the business, and I feel like he's really struggling from the perspective of all of a sudden he wasn't in charge of hundreds of people like he had been. He was working with me, and I didn't want him to feel like I was constantly saying, I need you to do this. I need you to do this. We're doing this. Like from a man standpoint, I didn't think that was a very nice position to be in. And whilst it wasn't affecting our relationship, I could actually see it was affecting him a little bit. So, and she said to me, the first month is so hard. She said, I had no idea what to do. I felt like I was letting mum down. I felt like I was the weak link. And she said, I gave it a month and it all just worked out. So she said, just understand. And she explained to me from her perspective what it had been like leaving corporate. And she said, give him grace in this area. This is probably how he's feeling. He's probably feeling really lost, and he's probably feeling like he doesn't know what to do. And she was so instrumental in helping us through that first month. So I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity. So I guess that was kind of what I was wondering, if Brian, if you had those same feelings of like, I can't think of the word, like feeling like, is this the right move for me personally and emotionally, from being in a position of leadership into, oh, this is a really different dynamic.
So, yes, I completely agree with that sentiment. It is a huge ego hit. It's a terrible feeling. And the more responsibility you have, as Leon, as you can understand here, the more responsibility you have and the more you've grown in your career and higher up you go, the worse it is when you leave it and you're going from the stability financially, since, Joy's the entrepreneur, which is by definition never stable, right? Because you're always on. It's always up to you, right? But that's the glorious part of being an entrepreneur, is like you're making your future, and that's why we do what we do, right? But the stability, you have to take that as part of the package. This is part of the package. So when I left my corporate career, I ran a $2 billion program, was responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing for the products and services that we were responsible for. And then the very next day, I'm responsible for taking the kids to school and getting them off the bus. The contrast was stark, and you felt it keenly. That I am not the person I was. And of course I was that same person. I didn't feel that way. And I felt like, wow, I've given all this up, and now I'm making lunch for the kids. And now I'm doing all those things that Joy did. And so it gave me a great sense in that first year of what being a mom was all about. And I thought I knew, and I figured out that I had no idea how hard moms everywhere work, because they work and they are a mom. And when you're just a dad, literally you're just a dad comparatively to what we do. Not to put ourselves down, but it gave me a great respect even more for what Joy and moms do. So it is definitely going to be an ego hit. And I wrote that down to say that, and you segued perfectly into that, Samantha, that if people are looking at, hey, do I want to make this move? Just prepare yourself ahead of time that's going to be a hit to your ego. And then to remember what you're doing it for, if you end up doing it, is that you have a bigger vision. You believe in your partner and what they're doing and what they see and what you see for them and what you see for yourself being involved in it too. And I'm the back office. Joy's the face of the business. Thank God. and I'm the back office, right? So, and so being comfortable with that and knowing that ahead of time is really going to help someone make that transition from corporate into bus driver, and grocery getter, and, hey, we have to repair this and call the AC people, and, because I've got to work today. Well, wait a minute, I have to work too. But it's
Yeah.
so,
And I need this lead page
yeah.
and I need this invoice sent and, like
Right,
all those
right,
little
right.
things, back
All
office
the
things.
things. Yeah,
All
So
of
exactly.
it.
Leon, I want to ask you, were you the catch-all department, or was it really focused?
Yeah, well, I think it probably did start out that way because I think me not knowing what to do ended up just being what Sam told me to do, which is fine because that worked out pretty well. So,
Yeah.
but we had something similar. Well, Sam's got a dance background, as most people know. I hope most people know anyway. It's an amazing career, and it was always front stage. That's Sam, and backstage. That's me. So, and I think if you redefine how you think about things, because as a leader in the business, in the retail business, when I was a corporate, it was you're there as a leader to support your staff to do the job you need them to do. And so I think about it this way now, I'm the person that's there to support Sam so she can do what she needs to do. So yes, I make the lunches and the kind of stuff as well. So yeah, and then from I think the more you can keep them doing what they need to do in their happy zone, I
What we
think
do
the better.
best.
So
Right?
yeah. So it did become a bit
Yeah.
of a catch-all, and I think probably now I know what to look for now, so I don't have to get thrown as many catches.
Yes. Yes. The role gets more defined over time. Exactly.
Yep.
Totally. So, how long have you guys been in business now? So, is that together? Is that about 4 years? It was the pandemic, right?
4.5 years. Yeah, 4.5 years. January.
So, 4.5 years down the track, Joy, would you change it?
Not at all. Never, ever, ever.
Well,
I'm
I
so
feel
glad we
relieved.
What was that,
I
Brian?
feel relieved.
Right? What would I have said? I don't know right now. No, I'm so glad that we did it. And honestly, and we'll have to share some stories about how boundaries and communication, because when you're working and you're living in the same place, I kind of missed initially, I may say this, I kind of missed the days of everybody leaves the house, the kids go to school and Brian goes to work and I can be in my zone and I have the house to myself. And suddenly, I guess I forgot to say that Brian was working from home for 6 months before he left his job. So it's kind of I was getting and being at home. But then when I was oh, this isn't going away. And, the kids go to school and Brian stays here. And I love him, but we just where's this space? Where's the definition of life and business? It starts encroaching, right? So we had to find how to I don't want to not like you.
Yeah, right. It's a real thing.
I'm thinking, how is that even possible?
Oh, you can definitely say the same about me too, right? Sometimes we'll be having just a regular conversation, Joy, would you please take your CEO hat off for a minute, please? Anyway, so I think it's been about finding the boundaries, communication. Am I in business mode? Are you in business mode right now? Because just to be totally just funny, I noticed this the other day. I'm getting out of the shower. We always have great ideas while we're in the shower. Getting out of the shower,
100%.
drying my hair and getting dressed. Brian, I've got this idea and I'm blah, blah, blah. And where does that happen in the corporate world?
Right?
Never.
Exactly.
Getting out of the shower,
I don't
cheering
recall
with
it
your
ever happening
colleagues.
in my office. I don't know about
Unless
yours.
there's some sort of corporate we don't know about.
But then it's encroaching on Brian's time, at 8 a.m. in the morning. Maybe he doesn't want to talk about that now, and it's just my mind's
Totally
running.
okay, of course.
Of course, you are usually more than me.
Right.
But it's like, is that person in a space? Is this the right time? Are they in business mode? Do they just need to just be? So like knowing sometimes when it's business hours and when it's not, it's sometimes rather undefined. Or it's like I was saying to Brian, it's like when you do have little kids and you finally get a date and go out to dinner, it's like, let's not talk about the kids, right?
Yeah, totally.
So do that. Like, let's not talk about business tonight, or this morning or this weekend or whatever the case may be.
That happened actually last night. Go ahead, Samantha.
No, I want to hear the story.
Funny story.
Teacher, can I go next? So last night we were tired. We have some big initiatives that we're working on, and it's a lot of fun. We're enjoying it. But it's 8 o'clock, and we're shutting everything down. And just that night happened to be in particular, we were busy. And I said, okay. Joy usually tells me, look, no business. We're not talking. So I beat her to it. And I said, okay. So we have this little game we've been playing in the last month or two. It's like, if you are going to say anything in business, you have to speak in a foreign accent. So it makes you think twice before you actually say anything. So you have to say it in a foreign accent, or it can be I can speak in a Southern accent or whatever you want. It should make you slow down to really realize, do I really need to think about this right now? So it's just like a little prompter that we use to kind of make it fun. And then another thing that we haven't done yet, but I'm excited to do this at one point, where we're really like heads down. The only way that we can communicate with each other is if we text each other in a foreign language. Use Google Translate to figure out what the heck she's telling me, and then I will respond in whatever foreign language I want. And it doesn't have to be the same. You have to figure out which it is. So that's when
we haven't gone that far yet.
Well, make sure you do definitely let us know when that happens. We're here for it.
Okay, I will forward the emails.
Yeah, right, exactly. And
literally,
yeah, that's exactly right. You talked about the boundaries blurring between business and normal life, parenting life, home life, relationship life. I've not discovered this blurring thing. I've just discovered this whole everything is all in one pot thing. It's not even a blur. It's just like all there. How have you navigated that? Because I'm going to be brutally honest. I don't think Leon and I do actually navigate that. I think we just live in the pot.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Leon?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
All the things,
I think we don't mind it though. I think we are happy with it.
Totally. And I think it's a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, knowing yourself and what you need and what works. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit different for us because we don't have kids at home. And I think that adds like that's a whole piece of complexity that's gone. Because I have done business with my ex-husband with children at home, and that's a different dynamic. We don't have to deal with that dynamic. Totally. But for you guys, how do you navigate that, all of the things, and still be able to look after your relationship, which is so important,
right?
I was going to say it went really silent there.
Where do we go with this one? Well, we have just one left at home now, and he's going into senior year of college, so not here all the time. So it is more like it's a lot more together time. Like it's just he and I in the evening, all of that. Of course, we've been married for a much longer period of time too. I don't know if that plays into it of, just like, hey, I want to, we're both, going into our 50s now and, what, just enjoying this phase of life and everything. But we've had to at least, I have to turn my brain off. There have been times where I just have to recharge. I have to turn my brain off. When I'm done with Zoom calls for the week, while I love being on with clients and all the things, I'm like, hey, no Zoom till next week, because just the introvert in me needs some time to decompress and recharge. But we had kind of early on had to come up with a system of we can't talk about all the things all the time. Now the kids were home too, and there was their stuff too, but I'm more of a compartmentalizer. I'm like, I'm in this brain space. I'm in this brain space. Brian could be in the pot of everything all the time. To be fair, he could be. I'm the one that really can't be. So it like, is this, send me an email. So literally we send each other emails all day long. Like it's not urgent. It's just there for you. Give me a deadline, send me an email. Or there's the send me a text, like quick thing. I'm doing a grocery order. Do you need XYZ? Like literally in between my calls. Or it's like, hey, I need a question answered. I know you're offline. Knock, knock, knock on my office door. We have separate offices, which is important too. Like knowing like
Oh,
what is send me an
100%.
email? What is email? What is text worthy? And what is like, I need to knock on your door worthy? That's really helped to like define that.
The
Yeah.
thing is, if it's important, don't text it, because we'll never remember it. That link, didn't you text me that link? I can't remember if I texted it. I
got an
can't
email.
remember. But the thing is, then you're searching through text history, and then, oh, we were arguing that day. And oh, then you go back further and it's like, oh, we were out. Okay, we were doing this. And it's like, and then you get distracted in the scroll brain. And so it just email it, right? It's so much easier because you can search it.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you mentioned separate offices, because that is something that Leon and I have too. And I think it's really important because you need your own space when you're working, and there's so much, going on in business, and there's life, and there's all the other things that if you don't have your own space, I think it can be really overwhelming.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like feeling like you have your door closed and like you're in this zone, and it's not like an open office space where someone can tap on your shoulder at any moment. And if that's your spouse, that might really get on your nerves.
Right.
So
he can do.
We've even taken it a step further. I mean, even before we moved and Brian was remote, there would be times where like I'd book a conference room or I'd book a remote workspace when he was working virtually. Like, I just need some space to myself. I don't have the house to myself anymore. I just need to work on a project or be heads down or just be in a different headspace. And that really helps.
Yeah.
So those people that are thinking about like, hey, making that move to working together, that's a great first step. Is to get used to having your own space. And if you need some space, and that just makes it a little bit more comfortable, that you recognize that early. So that's something that's important, is to recognize. And it's taken me probably 4 years plus to recognize some things. One thing is to anticipate when she doesn't want to talk to me. I need to anticipate that, right? As Joy says, I'm peopled out. Right.
I've had a very full week of calls. Sometimes one given week is more full.
And I haven't had any calls. I didn't even go to the grocery store. I didn't even talk to the mailman. It's like, you're the first person I've seen all day, and I want to talk and find out how your day was, honey. It's like, nope, that's not happening. And you just need to know. So anticipate that and try not to be offended at that. Right. And those are things into it. If I could know that ahead of time, it's like she needs space to be able to know that ahead of time before we would have started working together. That would have helped with the friction early on, for sure, is to anticipate partner needs and know when, okay, I need to just, and sometimes even there are days when she's been specifically heads down where it's a no talking day. So
we did that when the kids were home during the pandemic. I'm like, oh, no
talking day, right? So the only thing you do is text.
Yes.
And only text if it's really important.
Right.
So doing that, Joy really appreciated that, because then the next day it was like, okay, I've had some space and things are back to normal. So that's something we've done, and it helps. It helps.
I absolutely love that. I love that, because I know
an idea, Leon. There's an idea, Leon.
Well, only because I know there's sometimes that Leon will come and he'll sort of poke his head in my office, and he looks like he has the fear of God in him. And sometimes I feel bad about that. And sometimes I think, well, I'm glad that you know that. I'm glad that you know that I'm in my zone and you need to leave me alone.
Exactly.
Yeah. The problem from my side is though, like, I know she's on Zoom calls a lot, and I'm assuming it's the same as you, Joy, where it's a lot. And, I need to talk to her about something, but I've got to catch in between, but I don't want to break a mental flow state as well. And I'm like, but I really need to know this, right? So Yeah,
I
kind of
set
together.
I set my alarm at least once today to get her before she went, used the restroom, went and got something to eat real quick, and then got back on the next. I set my alarm to be able to get in that 5 minute
The
window.
window.
It just needed to ask her that question.
You
That's
did
the
that
type.
today. You pulled me in to ask me one thing. I have 15 minutes between calls, at least, to be fair. But you knew it would be 10 minutes for those two things. Get a snack, use the bathroom.
But Joy
for the
occasionally
next call,
overgives. She
right?
occasionally overgives, and I try to remind her of her own boundaries. But she loves working with her clients, and it's like 10 till, it's 7 till, it's 5 till. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to get just one for the business question before she's on again.
Oh, I want to flip to personal time because Leon, you've got a really, I love that you've done this and it actually makes me laugh all the time. You use our calendar quite well. Do you want to share what you do to look after our personal life?
Well, I actually book in like the events, like if it's going to be, like a lunch or we go to breakfast. So I actually book those at the calendar. So no one can book it and get in front of me. So
Oh, that's good.
So I'll just be in
that
the
works
office
really
and I'll
well.
see something pop up like, oh, we're going to dinner tomorrow night, or oh, we're going to have coffee in the morning. And it'll just pop up like Leon has invited you to coffee tomorrow morning. And he just pops it straight in the calendar because he's like, no, I'm her husband and I want first dibs on her calendar. And I love that. Like it makes me feel really good. And I love that he knows that we need time away to go and nurture us. And for me, he always knows when I'm overworked or a little bit like, oh, I can't sort of come up for air. And I'll just see one of these pop up and I'm like, oh, you read the room perfectly, babe. Like, I love that he's almost like my personal concierge of looking after my mental health and my well-being. And and then we go and we just take some time out of the business. And I think that that's been a really great way for us to look after our relationship because that's so important because it's so easy when you're in business, right, to just let it bleed into 24/7. So easy. There's not that clock off time. So do you guys have a booked in date night or, do you book into each other's calendars? How do you look after your relationship?
Go ahead, Joy.
We tend to be more spontaneous about it. It's kind of like, okay, it's 5 o'clock. Brian actually did make something for dinner that's waiting for us. Thank you, Brian.
Made
But
dinner.
sometimes it's just, we're
Should
just
be-
finishing up and it's like, let's go out tonight. We need some time out. So we're a little bit more spontaneous about it. Of like, let's just do this. We're just kind of feeling it in the moment. Like, let's go to the beach today, like a Friday afternoon or Saturday morning or whatever we need to do. I would say the other thing too that's helped nurture a relationship is we've been more intentional about friendships, about going out with other couples, getting together with people, inviting people. We're having a pool party at our house on Saturday with two other couples.
So cool.
Both the women are local, they're coaches, and their husbands are great. So just like, I think that helps us too. It's like not just he and I, we're nurturing relationships and just enjoying this stage of life and having fun and not always just being he and I too. And by the way, it's not easy. It takes time to find friendships of people that get you. Like you said, that work in traditional jobs, they're kind of like, oh, that's cool, but they don't really get it to really have sometimes deeper conversations.
100%.
So some ideas of how we do it. Yeah.
There are times we do book each other's schedule for like when we're going to, so we have a condo on Sand Key and we book time and I'll tell Joy, it's like, when do you want to do this next? And we'll specifically schedule the time out of like when you want to leave, when you want to get back, and what are we doing. So yeah, we definitely book time on each other's schedules if there's something important. And occasionally we have meetings. I don't know if you guys have meetings, but we will book, and then we'll book time, and we'll book time sometimes against another meeting, so we won't go long. I've got to stop. I got to be on here, so let's shove it in real close to something else. But sometimes it's strange that you have to book time with the person you're living with, but when you're working together, sometimes it's necessary.
I think you're right. It keeps it from bleeding into the life stuff and like when you want to be enjoying life or whatever. Or sometimes like there's little cues you can give the other person. Like if, I have my Kindle open, it means I'm reading fiction and I'm relaxing, I'm in that mode, taking the cues from the other person of like what they're doing and what mode they're in then. And, or, trying to get the business meetings, in during the day, but leaving room for spontaneity. Brian, we definitely on a Friday or Saturday night, like normally when I'm in bed at 9:30, all of a sudden we just start like visioning some ideas and like it's an hour later and you're like, you're still awake. I'm like, I don't know, this actually energized me this time. So I think going with the flow is important too. Like, is this work for me? Is this work for you? Is this like expanding us? Does it feel good? And going with that flow.
Yeah, and I think that we've got what I love about being in business is we've got the opportunity to do that. Because even we've got an intensive coming up, so I'm working a lot, and I was working on Sunday, and just I don't know, it was Sunday afternoon, and Leon just went, "Put your shoes on." I went, "Why? What's going on?" He's like, "We're going to the beach right now." And we were like, it was just like in the car, we were going to the beach. He's like, no, you needed to get away from that. You needed to clear, we needed to clear our head. And we ended up going out for dinner and we had a great night. And I definitely did not work anymore on that day, had a glass of wine, came home. So, we've got the opportunity to do that where you wouldn't be able to do that in a job. So that's, there's the good and the bad, right? We're able to balance both. I'd love to do a bit of a round robin. And I'm going to start with you this time, Brian. Knowing what you know now about being in business with Joy, what is something that you wish you had have done sooner?
So something I wish I would have done sooner. I'll put in the context of like, when we first started doing business together full time. I wish I would have prepared myself a little bit more ahead of time to be prepared for not being the person that's the star of the show financially and not being the person that everybody relies on. And because like for many people, that's their fulfillment in life, that I take care of everybody. And I wish I would have been more prepared for that. I wish I would have been more prepared to deal with the friction that inevitably will come up. So I could summarize it this way. Whatever your relationship is like before you start working together full-time together, whatever that relationship looks like will be magnified 1,000 times. Because now there's no escape. You're with each other. You're together. It's a crucible. And it will bring those impurities to the top, and you'll see it far more in contrast to what you may have normally tolerated in a relationship where you can leave each other every day and come back to it. That would have been helpful to know in the beginning.
So well said. What about you, Joy? What do you wish you had have known sooner?
I think I wish I would have known sooner what a void it would have created for him. Even though he was already working from home and already like really great dad as far as like, doing what was needed and all of that, like that void of people and that void of like knowing what to do every day. That was just clear and obvious. He'd show up at work and know what projects to work on. So I think like having an actual role in place or having some like, instead of being the catch-all, which probably felt like shit initially, that would have been good to think ahead of, and he had when we made a move years and years ago, it was just a time where, he was between jobs and everything. And that really it affects a guy, a lot. If it doesn't have that identity, it can be a lot tied up in being the provider and, the role they fill. And it's like, duh, that was a miss for you, Joy. We were so caught up in all the things of like not seeing that. So recognizing that really helped and probably sooner would have been better. That's all right.
Made it through.
Things are much clearer in retrospect, aren't they?
Yes.
So, Leon, what about you? What do you wish you had have known sooner about? And this is weird because I'm going to say about working with me.
So many things. I'm just contemplating a thing back on, the actual that first day and the first weeks. And I think I probably just led heavily on Sam to tell me what to do. But one thing that came up, and I'm probably going to be like a bit off tangent here, was how we both think would have made it easier to work out things. Lots of things. The things are the things here. Earlier on, where Sam makes a decision in -4 milliseconds, and I take like 10 minutes or longer, and realizing that would have made it smooth because like she has to prep me and then go and come back and ask me the question. And so I think if I'd been a bit more aware of that, I could help deal with it better. So she's like super fast broadband, and I'm on dial up. So, just, but working out how that that works, because I need to work in with Sam. I think realizing that earlier would have made it like smooth. So
yeah. I want to actually layer on top of that, because that's exactly what I was going to say as well, is understanding how different we both are. And for me, I think at the beginning I didn't have grace for that. You would go silent and I'd be like, oh my God, hurry up. We got shit to do. I didn't understand the way you were, and you didn't understand the way I was. And that almost made you put the brakes on even more, because you were afraid, because I was like, hurry up. And you're like a deer in the headlights, like, I don't know what the answer's meant to be.
I always try not to be annoying. I don't like being annoying to people. So
I think that's definitely I guess this is exactly what Brian was saying, but in a different way, is understanding how each other are. And because when we're with someone that's in an office, we give more grace to that person. Oh, that's the way they are. But when we're in a relationship, we can actually let that fade away. And I think for us, that's been the important part, is understanding that this is the way that person is. And just because they're our partner doesn't mean that we can change that. There's that different dynamic. So it's definitely about that. So I love that you brought that up. I want to quickly touch on one last thing before we finish up, and it's friction. You mentioned it, Joy, just as a word, but there are going to be times, because you're in a relationship, where the friction is going to be very different to where there's friction in an office. How do you guys deal with friction?
The ongoing question,
Right?
because outside of work, let's just say a couple that each of them went to work separately every day. There are life things to decide. There are things about adult children, like, I don't know if I would recommend that to them. No, I feel this way about that. Like, there's still life to discuss, or there's things happening with parents or other family members, where differences of opinions will come up, So the thing is we've come a long way, Brian, I think, where we can, like, I have my opinion. We can both have our opinion. We can both have our opinion on this. It doesn't have to be solved right away, I think. Anyway, it doesn't have to be solved right away, but you sort of take that into the next day sometimes, even if you're okay, of like, now it wasn't like we go our separate ways and kind of the energy clears. It's like sometimes that comes up again in the middle of the day, of like, well, we just talked about that last night, and see, this is why I said that, and so there's sort of a life friction that just happens for everybody. I think it's just a little more in your face when you're working together, that there's all the business decisions to make, which often, it can feel like, well, if this decision, there's money obviously involved, feels at stake in making the right decisions, if you're, depending on what decisions you're making together. So it can amp things up. Like Brian said, it just kind of amplifies what's already there. Then you bring like the business decisions, the clients, the money, kind of all into meshing together. Being able to, we've been sometimes using like little cues to, like, we can both be a little stubborn. I will admit that. We're a lot alike in a lot of ways. Like, so we kind of, hit against each other with the exact same patterns, and like recognizing that, like, one of us can like tone this down. Like, let's find common ground. Brian's very good at finding common ground. I'm more of like, I want to talk this all out first, but he knows that about me. I know that about him. So that having some tools to, like, friction's going to happen. You're a robot if there's no friction.
100%.
Yeah.
And Brian, have you come up with ways to navigate before it's happening? So let me give you some context. This is something I haven't experienced with Leon at all, but with my ex-partner, like if there was a decision that had to be made, I was like, nope, this is my way. And he'd be like, nope, this is my way. And we just realized that, no, we had to be like a long way apart. This isn't something that I've had to navigate with Leon at all. But, are there ways or are there things that come up that you see in advance? Like,
Yes,
it's almost,
absolutely. 100%. So just today, there's this little formula. It's a great little tip I learned from corporate. And when I explained it first to Joy, we were having an issue just right having moved to Florida. And it was before I actually, became full-time working with Joy. After sitting in for a couple of days with trying to figure out what's going on, and it was just one thing after another. It wasn't between Joy and I. Was just with the whole newness of everything. And then I realized, and then we would be bickering at each other over little stuff, right? It was nothing to do with what we're dealing with at the time. And then I realized this little formula I learned, and it really makes sense. And this is one thing that's really helped us. And now, even today, I said, Joy, let's use this little formula, because what we got coming up tomorrow, even, there's going to be a lot of activity and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for a little bit of friction to come up here and there. And that formula is storming, norming, performing. So when a team gets together for the first time, a lot of times, or you have new work or anything new, when things are running normally, this doesn't happen. There's no friction because it's all anticipatory. But when it's new and you don't know what's going on, and there's problems and things break and glass gets broken and people's feelings get hurt or whatever, that's the storming period. Right. And then after you go through that storming period, then there's a normalization time where it's like, okay, everything is normal and we can anticipate things a little bit more. And then you have performing, where it's like we stood up we built this program, and now it's working, and it's working at capacity, and it's performing what we want. And to understand when we're going through each phase is really, really helpful. And to be able to anticipate when something might go wrong, when that's when change is happening, or when we make change on ourselves, right, of what's going on, to recognize ahead of time that there might be some storming involved, kind of takes the pressure off to not get into the friction that could have been there.
I love that so much.
He did send me an email today that said, tomorrow starts this new initiative. It'll be in storming phase. Let's remember that together. Heart.
I love that.
We're learning, because we're going to be almost like 50-50 engaged in this particular initiative. So we'll be like working together very closely. It might be a lot of activity in the next week. So thank you for that reminder, Brian.
That is so good. Because I know, actually, I love that so much, because I feel like we could use that, Leon, for us. Because for me, actually, oh gosh, how do I say this? You start to notice the way that you react more when your partner's there. So if I'm coming up to like a big project, and it's normally like, I'm going to put it in air quotes, when I'm on. So when, for example, if we're running an event, I know, because I've been running events for over 30 years, that the day before, don't talk to me. I didn't realize that before. Like I didn't realize how much I would just shut people down. And I think it actually wasn't until I was with Leon where he would look like, oh my God, what has she done to me? And to me, I hadn't realized that that's what I was like, because I was just like, I'm really in my zone. So I'm guessing, Leon, that you've learned something similar to what Brian's talked about without me even realizing until this moment.
Yeah, well, I did realize that before events, those things happen. So yeah. But there's also, I go, well, if you're under lots of pressure, I'm here to support. I'm here for you.
I appreciate that. It's people, when you're in this situation, it's hard to find people to really understand and empathize, right? And so, like, we're getting together with friends, but both those guys, they're married to entrepreneurial women, and they don't work together. Well, a little bit. One does, but it's like that doesn't matter to me. The fact that you're married to a woman who's an entrepreneur, that's all that matters to me. So there's going to be some great time hanging out and enjoying some, bonding time like that to just yeah, this happens in my house. Oh yeah, well, this happens in my house too. And it's all in good, and it's all in good faith, and it's all in good fun, but it helps to collaborate. So same to you, Leon. That was a pleasure getting to know you guys. Such a lovely couple,
Absolutely.
and you can tell synergy between you two is just it's a bedrock.
It really
Yeah,
is.
and likewise. Sorry, Joy.
I feel like we need to hear a funny story of you guys. I feel like we shared one or two, and I feel like we need to hear a day in the life for a moment or something funny. Hope you
Oh
don't
my
mind.
The last funny thing that
goodness.
happened to you guys.
Yeah.
Leon, can you think of anything?
Oh, I bet.
Well,
Maybe you're willing to
I
share,
think something
please.
that shows Sam and how her brain thinks was we were obviously engaged at the time, but we were going to get married, but we hadn't quite decided where yet. And so Sam came, she was Googling something or other, and she goes, "What about this?" And then about an hour later, she'd already booked the wedding, which happened to be in Alaska on a glacier. So
And we
I'm
live in
"You hate
Australia."
cold stuff." I'm like, "You must really love me." Like,
Aw.
I think that story just shows how crazy entrepreneurs are. It's just like, yeah, we're doing this thing and we just do it. And
Yep.
yes, you're right. I had organized our wedding in an hour on the other side
Wow.
of the world.
Oh,
No
like
news for an hour.
transferable,
I could totally see that.
transferable
So-
skill. Right?
So now anyone that's listening, you can feel sorry for Leon because that's exactly how every day is in our house. Oh,
that's how she rolls.
oh, 100%. And you know what? It's not just me. It's just about every entrepreneur I know, right? Like that's why we do what we do. I think I've absolutely loved this conversation for so many reasons because it shows that there is a transition period that definitely needs to be talked about because I've heard about this story in silos, but I think that it needs to be a bigger conversation because there's this romantic thought of I want to retire my husband and have him come work with me, but there's a lot of dynamics that need to be nurtured for both sides of the relationship to ensure that not just the business works, but the relationship continues. And this conversation, like I can tell you guys, you wouldn't have it any other way, right? And we wouldn't either, because as much as there is all this stuff to navigate, like how lucky are we that we can just decide that we're going to go on holiday tomorrow or go on vacation tomorrow, or, just actually I've had enough of today. We're going out for lunch. You can't have that in other things. And we've got the freedom to be able to do that. We've got the ability to create our income so that we can do that. And for everything that we've talked about, like it's just such we're so I can say this for Leon and I, we're so blessed to be in this position and so grateful that we've created this life for us, and I can tell that you two are such a beautiful couple and so much, you have so much love and appreciation and respect for each other. And I think that really at the end of the day, that's what it's all about to make it work. Really need to keep that love, that respect, that appreciation there. So thank you so much for coming and talking about this. I feel like, Brian, you had something to say there. Is there anything you want to finish off with?
No, I really agreed with everything you said. The love and respect is there, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I completely agree with that. I don't know if Joy feels the same, but
I
do.
know Joy feels the same because she's told me.
It's totally worth it. And
Absolutely.
it's just a privilege and, like you said, a gift to be able to be in creator space of your life, and have choices and enjoy the journey, and not be stuck by somebody else's rules or working for somebody else, and just to really create the lifestyle that you want and to do it together is the best.
Absolutely.
I will say that I will say that from retiring your husband out standpoint, that is a complete misnomer. I have never felt
100%. I'm glad you picked up on that. I'm glad you picked up on that.
You
keep
work
saying-
I was thinking, who's that? Who's
Where is
retired?
Right, exactly.
You know
Where's my
why it
leisure
came
coat?
up? Because I see it in marketing all the time. I retired my husband, so that's where it came from. But there is this part that I always go, retired my husband. I don't know about you guys, but I work my husband way harder than you did to work
Where are these
before.
guys?
I know.
They have a Facebook
Are
group?
they right? They're out in the yachts. I don't know.
I don't know.
Exactly.
Seriously. What do I got to do?
Leon, is there anything that you want to finish off with?
I just think it's been great, and there's some great points been brought up, and I think we should do it again.
I would love to do it again. Thank
This
you
has
so
been
much, Joy.
therapeutic.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Joy and Brian, for joining me. Thanks so much, Leon, because I threw, that could have gone bad for you. Not that it would have, but I know you were a little bit nervous with what I would throw out there. So thank you all for being vulnerable and sharing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Thank you.
creating this space.